In 2023, Cody Bellinger took home the Comeback Player of the Year award in the National League, and for good reason. He was fantastic last year after playing very poorly the 2 seasons prior. His numbers were eye-popping enough in 2023 that he finished 10th in NL MVP voting and took home the second Silver Slugger award of his career. Despite these numbers and accolades, there are underlying metrics painting a more pessimistic outlook, suggesting Bellinger may not be back to his pre-2020 form. All this uncertainty surrounding the free agent, first baseman, center fielder can be boiled down to one very difficult question to answer. What even is a Cody Bellinger? To determine what Cody Bellinger is, it's best to first define what he has been, which over the course of his career has been many different things. A 2017 preseason top 20 overall prospect, Bellinger arrived in the major leagues on April 25th and proceeded to smack 24 home runs in his first 2 months, spanning 57 games, including 6 multi-homer performances. This barrage resulted in a ridiculous 405 isolated slugging percentage and offensive production 57% better than league average. Bellinger showed decent plate discipline but a penchant for whiffs, walking in 9.6% of plate appearances but striking out in 28.7% of them as well. Over the remaining 3 months of the 2017 season, Bellinger showed better plate discipline and reeled in his strikeout problem. But the league started to exploit weaknesses in his approach and fed him a heftier dose of breaking balls, cooling off the young slugger to a degree, as he posted a 123 WRC plus the rest of the way. All told, Bellinger produced a 933 OPS, a 138 WRC plus, and 3.9 WAR. He set to that point the National League home run record for rookies, clubbing 39 home runs in his age 21 season. He also provided decent base running value and well above average defense at first, and even showed that he may be a capable outfielder. For all his efforts, Bellinger took home the National League Rookie of the Year award by unanimous decision. Bellinger's 2018 season ended up looking more like the second half from his rookie campaign rather than the first, causing many people to declare that Cody had fallen prey to the dreaded sophomore slump. They weren't completely wrong, but there were still plenty of positives to take away from his second year in the bigs. He played all 162 games and cut down on whiffs, and while his 814 OPS represented a drop-off of 119 points, he was still 20% better than league average by WRC+. He once again provided solid base running value and emerged as a premium defender not only at first base but in the outfield as well. By the end of 2018, Bellinger had managed a very respectable 3.5 WAR. With 9+ months of really good but not quite great numbers dating back to July of 2017, the conclusion seemed to be that the Dodgers had a 3 to 4 win player to plug into the middle of their lineup, an extremely valuable and controllable asset. But then, 2019 arrived. Bellinger evolved and laid waste to major league pitching. He swung at pitches in the zone more, swung at pitches out of the zone less, and made not only more contact with everything he swung at, but louder contact as well. As the season wore on, pitchers decided they should throw him in the zone less, and Cody was happy to take his walks, almost doubling his walk-to-K ratio from 2017 through 2018. Bellinger's batted ball data presented a thumper on par with what he displayed in his rookie season, but somehow, he also managed to cut down on his strikeout rate by 8.8 percentage points from the 2017 to 2018 seasons. If he implemented a 2-strike approach, it only bore out in his K rate, as he went from striking out 44.7% of the time in 2-strike counts in 2017 through 2018 down to 32.1% of the time in 2019. Meanwhile, his batted ball data in 2-strike counts didn't meaningfully budge. In other words, Bellinger simply stopped striking out, while still hitting for tremendous raw power, culminating in a 305, 406, 629 triple slash line, representative of production 61% better than league average. He chipped in another year of positive base running and had his first season with more innings in the outfield than at first base, and wouldn't you know it, the once first base only prospect excelled, logging fantastic defensive marks across the board, as amongst right fielders he tallied the second most defensive runs saved, the third most UZR, and the first most outs above average. All told, Cody had produced a 7.8 WAR season and took home the MVP award in the National League. In the greater Los Angeles area, the sentiment was that the Dodgers had to extend Bellinger, though with him being a Boris agent, it's practical to wonder if that was even on the table. But then the 2020 COVID season hit, and under the bizarre circumstances, MLB played only 60 regular season games. In such a small sample, anyone's numbers can look distorted, and Cody's certainly did, as his OPS dropped to under 800 for the first time in his career, coming in at 789 on the back of a 239, 333, 455 performance. However, looking at his peripheral stats, while he wasn't quite up to his 2019 levels, he was still mostly the same guy he'd been compared to his body of work from 2017 through 2019. Considering that his approach and batted ball data looked relatively unchanged, it's clear that he was the recipient of some bad luck and didn't deserve the numbers he'd earned to that point. His results should have been nearly identical to what he'd produced on average to that point in his career. Retroactively projecting the remaining 102 games had the season been played under regular parameters, it's not crazy to think Cody could have finished with something like a 263, 356, 517 line with an 873 OPS, 130 WRC plus, and 4.5 WAR. But the environment in which the remaining games were played changed dramatically, and he continued to struggle in the postseason, although ironically to that point in his career, it was the best he'd ever performed in the playoffs. However, it was also in the 2020 playoffs that Bellinger suffered a pretty severe shoulder injury. In the 7th inning of Game 7 in the NLDS, Cody crushed a go-ahead and ultimately game-winning home run to cap off a 3-1 comeback against the Braves and send the Dodgers to their 3rd World Series in 4 years. On his way back to the dugout, he bashed forearms with Enrique Hernandez to celebrate and dislocated his shoulder. Tragic when a seemingly innocuous celebration has career-altering ramifications. After becoming a World Series champion, Bellinger had surgery in November to repair the dislocated shoulder, causing him to fall at least 10 weeks behind his normal schedule. He came into 2021 already at a disadvantage, but 4 games into the season he fractured his fibula after being cleated in Oakland. He returned at the end of May and never got it going before he departed 12 games later due to left leg tightness. That sidelined him for another 11 days, and it's safe to say that he never recovered that season. His performance was abysmal, posting a hilariously awful 165, 243, 02 slash line that seemed very obviously linked to injuries. In 2021, he failed to touch the 110 max exit velocity he'd surpassed in every season prior, and posted career lows in barrel rate and hard hit rate. He also swung at pitches outside of the zone at the highest clip of his career, and also racked up a career worst swinging strike rate, leading to the worst overall contact percentage outside of his rookie season. These poor performance indicators added up to a walk-to-K ratio of 0.33, with only an 8.9 walk percentage and a 26.9 K percentage. At this point, he was probably a candidate to be non-tendered, or at the very least, receive reduced pay. But LA remained hopeful, retained his services, and hoped he would take the offseason to get healthy and bounce back in 2022. But 2022 didn't go the way the Dodgers or Bellinger hoped. His walk and K rates continued to diverge, coming in at 6.9% and 27.3% respectively, logging the 13th worst walk-to-K ratio amongst 130 qualified hitters at 1 quarter walk for every strikeout. Meanwhile, the 69 WRC plus he posted over the 2021 through 2022 seasons made him the undisputed worst hitter in baseball for any player with at least 900 plate appearances. To give a perspective on just how far Bellinger had fallen, through the age of 23 in baseball history, Bellinger had accrued the 48th most WAR all time, and the 140 WRC plus he'd posted was the 36th best, tied with the likes of Lou Gehrig and Giancarlo Stanton. Amongst players in the top 50 for WAR through age 23, Bellinger's decline in his age 24 through 26 seasons is unparalleled, as he is the only player from this top 50 to drop below average by either WRC plus or WAR per 600 in his age 24 through 26 season. The Dodgers, still having won 111 games in 2022 despite Cody Bellinger's tepid play, figured they could at the very least replicate his production with James Outman, or some form of platoon. So rather than go through arbitration again with Bellinger, who had become a very expensive gamble at this point in his career, the Dodgers made the decision to non-tender him, a move that was unimaginable just a few years prior. With an MVP in the not-too-distant past, Bellinger was going to find a landing spot, and the Cubs took the gamble on him, inking Bellinger to a 1-year deal for $17.5 million. In a somewhat comical turn of events, the Dodgers signed Jason Hayward, who had actually just been released by the Cubs despite having 1 year and $22 million left on his contract. As bad as Bellinger had been over the past 2 seasons, the Dodgers probably felt they could get similar production or better from Hayward as a strong side platoon, and they'd only have to pay him the league minimum salary while the Cubs continued to foot the bill for over $21 million of his salary. The Dodgers were right, of course, and Hayward excelled, logging a 121 WRC plus and 2.2 WAR in 377 plate appearances. Just another successful Dodgers reclamation project. However, Bellinger was the one who really seemed to turn back the clock, and over 556 plate appearances slashed 307, 356, 525, culminating in a 134 WRC plus and 4.1 WAR. By a purely results-based perspective in his contract year no less, Cody Bellinger had a renaissance, effectively cleansing himself of his 2021 and 2022 performances and reclaimed his place amongst the game's best hitters. But perspective is everything, and while he produced offensive value 34% better than league average, the way he did it not only looked vastly different from how he'd produced at this level before, but it's fair to wonder if it's even repeatable, let alone sustainable. For starters, in a lot of ways, he looked very much like the hitter he'd been in 2021 and 22. Compared to the 2 previous seasons, Bellinger hit the ball less hard on average, produced less barrels, and made poorer swing decisions. That hard hit percent is especially worrisome, as in the StatCast era, in the 551 total seasons in which a player has logged a hard hit rate of 35% or lower, there have only been 19 individual seasons in which a player slugs 500. In the 331 seasons in which a hitter fails to reach even the 32% hard hit rate, there have only been 7 instances of a player slugging 500. Of all the players on these two lists, only Jose Altuve's and Jose Ramirez's names appear across multiple seasons, further substantiating the premise that slugging .500 with a hard hit rate under 35% is an incredibly hard feat to repeat. A lot of the other names, meanwhile, belong to players who either called Coors Field or Great American Ballpark home, or who played in one of the Rabbit Ball seasons of 2017 and 2019. Consider that the league, as a whole, with a hard hit rate between 28 and 35%, has slugged .391 since 2015. In other words, generally speaking, there's a flukiness involved in achieving elite slugging numbers with subpar hard hit rates. There is also negative signaling in his best hit stat, which measures only the top 10% of the hardest hit balls by an individual. The average exit velocity for Bellinger's hardest hit balls was 97.7 miles per hour, 118th out of 133 qualified hitters. This is not exactly the recipe for a comeback player of the year campaign. It shouldn't be surprising then that he outpaced his ex-WOBA by 43 points, the 23rd largest overproduction that StatCast has measured since its inception in 2015, meaning he was the recipient of quite a bit of good fortune, although with his 75th percentile sprint speed, he can turn some weak infield dribbles into singles and singles into doubles and so on. And all of this is not to say that all of his performance was luck-based. Bellinger did three things in 2023 that enabled him to outperform his expected stats and regain some of the value he'd lost over the previous two seasons. While Bellinger took a more contact-oriented approach, in all counts he really cut down in two-strike counts, taking his K rate in those instances from 46.6% over the last 2 years to 30.6% in 2023, a career best. Unlike in 2019, the last time he took a big chunk off of his K rate, there's also evidence in his batted ball data that proves he was emphasizing contact when down to his last strike in 2023. His average exit velocity, hard hit percentage, and barrel rate were all down significantly in two-strike counts. This isn't a trait unique to Bellinger. The league as a whole prioritizes contact over slugging with 2 strikes, but Bellinger took it to the extreme with his exit velocity decreasing 3 miles per hour, his hard hit rate dropping 10.7 percentage points, and his barrel rate nearly disappearing. Looking at his batted ball data in all other counts, there was maybe a concerted effort to make more contact, but for the most part he was the same hitter he'd been the last 2 years. From an article on MLB.com by Mike Petriello, forthcoming StatCast bat speed data will tell you that his average swing speed was 70.7 miles per hour before 2 strikes and 68.5 miles per hour on 2 strikes. It seems like such a minute detail to focus on, but when 30% of the pitches he faces over the course of a season are in 2-strike counts, putting the ball in play more often in those situations can make a significant difference on his overall line, even if said balls in play are not squarely hit. Here are Cody Bellinger's numbers in 2023 with his new 2-strike approach compared to if he had kept the same approach in 2-strike counts that he took in 2021 and 2022. While he's reportedly had a 2-strike approach dating back to 2018, this was the first time in his career that it's really stood out in the numbers. More uncertain that if he can replicate this approach in the future, however, is that even if he can, his results will likely not be so favorable, as he outperformed his OPS in 2-strike situations by nearly 150 points. Another tactic Bellinger employed successfully in 2023 was selectively pulling the ball in the air more often and with more authority than in recent history. In 2021 and 2022, despite a clear and significant reduction in his raw power, he actually hit more fly balls than he ever had, topping 47% in each season. However, even when he was pulling his fly balls, he wasn't hitting them with much authority, logging a cumulative hard hit rate of 39.5% on pulled fly balls over those 2 years. In 2023, he got that hard hit number back up to 49.2%, which, while still a far cry from his peak, was better than even his solid 2018 campaign. He also set a career high in pulled fly ball percentage at 33.2% and a career low in hitting fly balls to the opposite field at 26.1. Considering that MLB as a whole has a 1.887 OPS when they pull fly balls and a 461 OPS on opposite field fly balls, this is a more optimized approach. Sometimes this is thought of as an old man's trick, reserved for guys with diminishing skill sets and raw power who are trying to maximize their batted balls. Brian Dozier was the king of this, but also Brian McCann and Jose Bautista come to mind. The list of current players who consistently execute pulled fly balls at a much higher clip than league average is interesting and also includes some previously touched upon names like Jose Altuve and Jose Ramirez. But Bellinger didn't only sell out for pull side power, either because he simply couldn't get to it more often or because he knew he could take advantage of the restricted defensive shifts, or in part to his 2-strike approach, or due to random fluctuation. He logged more line drives and ground balls than he had in recent years, which buoyed his batting average. In a post-shift world, pulled ground balls struck by lefties aren't quite the death quell they've been in recent seasons, meaning if this decreased emphasis on fly balls was intentional, there's merit to the idea, although emphasizing both pulled fly balls as well as line drives and ground balls does feel like an extremely difficult tightrope to walk. However, Cody was also far less predictable when considering his ground ball spray chart, as he pulled only 59.2% of the balls he put on the ground compared to 67.8% of them from 2020 through 2022. Finally, and perhaps carrying the most uncertainty regarding year-to-year stickiness, Bellinger absolutely demolished breaking balls and off-speed pitches. Bellinger has played in 7 seasons, and despite putting up only his 5th best hard hit and barrel rates against these pitch types in a season, he set a career high in production against them with a 414 WOBA. His ex-WOBA was 347 against the same set of pitches, and considering his year-to-year WOBA against them fluctuates about 97 points on average, we can probably expect some negative regression in his production against breaking balls and off-speed pitches in 2024. While it's not impossible that he shifted his focus to do more damage on non-fastballs in 2023, it's not likely. Yes, his performance against fastballs has been poor dating back to 2020, and despite posting solid surface numbers against them in 2023, his 31.9 hard hit rate and 5.1 barrel percentage against them were both career lows. It was especially dismal against pitches 95 miles an hour and up, as out of 383 total pitches he saw at least 95 miles per hour, he didn't barrel a single one. His swing rate against these pitches at 54.8%, while lower than the previous 3 seasons, is still higher than the 3 seasons before that. If he's hunting breaking balls, the league will adjust, and Bellinger will have to adjust back. And when he's forced to make adjustments, it's possible he won't be able to uphold the approaches he's used in 2023. And that brings us back to the query that started all of this. What is a Cody Bellinger? Based on his current approach and skills, we can find plenty of player comps, and some of them are promising. Now, perhaps Bellinger skews towards the higher end of this group's offensive production, but the average WRC plus for this set of comps is 108, exactly the mark Steamer projects him to hit in 2024. It also can't be ruled out that the further away from his injury-riddled 2021 Bellinger gets, the more of his raw power returns. It's notable that his max exit velocity was up to 109.2 in 2023 after topping out at 107.4 in 2021 and 2022. So what Cody Bellinger is, or at least what he appears to be, is a solid all-around contributor and should produce value between 2 and 3 WAR on average over the next few years. Now maybe that's an underwhelming answer to a question with a potential dollar value of 9 figures, but this is a weak free agent market for position players, and whichever team feels just a fraction of a percent more certain than the others on what Cody Bellinger is, will pony up the funds for whatever it is he turns out to be.